Hello everybody and welcome back to this Android development and design course. And in this particular lecture we are going to reference our these two views, which are basically a text label, a text view, and a button. And we are going to reference it in our main activity.java class or file. And we are going to just basically make a function or a method, or just basically a method which when we are going to click I want more button, text view is going to change to maybe another fact, fun engineering fact, or something like this. Okay, so go back to main activity.java class, and at the top, right, just basically start writing your variables, which we are going to use to reference those views. Okay, so start with a text view and just write in text view, one word, and name it to whatever you want actually. And I'm going to name it fact TV. And make for the button fact button. And as you can see, we get two errors, which just basically says that we cannot resolve a symbol text view, which basically means we need to import those views, those objects into our main activity.java class in order to use them for our purposes. So just click on the error or a text view and press Alt-Enter, and you can see we get some kind of auto completion or just helpful messages, helpful actions to use in order to resolve this problem, and just basically just press enter on the import class, and the same for the button import class. And if you open up those import lines, you can see that we just created two imports, Android widget button, Android widget text view. Okay, so we have two variables, and now we want to reference them from the activity main.xml file. And we are going to reference them and find them via Android ID fact TV and Android ID fact button ID names. So go to onCreate method right here, and below set content view, we want to do is below set content view, but because if we are going to write above it, we are going to get errors, basically because we firstly want to create our actual view. I mean, to just basically reference our view, and after that we want to make some kind of actions. Okay, so just write fact TV equal sign and write find view by ID, and as you can see, auto completion just gives us an option. Press enter and semicolon at the end. And what we want to write in here, as you can see, we get a message, a helpful message, which says we want to get an ID from the activity.main.xml. And I'm going to write it like r.id. Okay, R stands for resource, and we can find, and this is actually a file, auto-generated file, which we can find on build folder, generated, source, r, debug, our package, and our file. And this is auto-generated file, which shouldn't be changed or anything, and you probably shouldn't and mustn't even go to this file and change anything because it's auto-generated. Because when we created text view, it was generated in this class by Android Studio, by Android SDK, and we just going to reference our text view through this file right here. Okay, but don't change that and don't edit that. whatever. And r.id, ID, we can actually see that we can find more, we can find more than ID. It's drawable, diamond, color, layout, and so on. But in our case, we want ID dot, and we want to find ID by the ID name, which is FactTV. And as you can see, we got an error. And what this error means is basically we need to cast this view. The method findViewById returns an instance of the class that is actually used to define that view in your XML file. The method signature returns a view to make it generic and usable for all classes that inherit from a for view. So if we remove this text, so we need to cast the return value to the class that our variable is defined when we used it. So what I meant is just go probably just press Alt Enter, and we get an option to cast to Android widget text view like this. Okay, so it's kind of tough explanation why we need to use it. Basically, this method findViewById is just using generic view, but we are not using just by a generic view. We want to use a text view, and this way we need to cast it. Okay, and now we need to reference it. Reference our button, fact button equals, we can write it by ourselves, button findViewById r.id dot fact button, and we basically got our two views from the activity main XML. And we can actually write some kind of comment, even though at the top, which 2 slashes means our program is not going to render it or just to compile it, and this is just for our purposes, and we can name it referencing views. And below that we can write another comment, and we can say making our button clickable. And what we meant is going to just create a method for the fact button, which basically means we are going to make functionality where when we press on I want more button, and we are going to change our basically text view. So below that, write fact button dot set on click listener, as you can see, and in here we can write new, how should I, okay, and we can write new, and when you press space and you press Ctrl plus space, you can get auto completion. Init mode, like this. I want it like this. And we can write on click listener and press enter. Write a couple of seconds, and basically Android Studio created for us a new object which is named on click listener, which basically means we are just basically creating an action where when we press fact button, which is fact button view, and name it and setting for it a set on click listener, which basically means when we click on that button or tap on that button in the smartphone terminology, and we basically creating a new object named onClickListener, and just basically Android is just created for us a onClick method in where we are going to write some kind of action, some kind of functions where we want to change our text view when we press the button. Okay, so we are going to do this in the next lecture. I hope you like this lecture. If you had some kind of questions or don't understand some kind of terminology, please write in the discussion section, and I'm going to be in there.